Shit happens in the world, interesting shit, and sometimes I'm a little bit late on it on YouTube, I admit that. Sometimes I just can't help that, I'm just too busy to make the video that I want to make. Other times, I admit it's just because I'm a lazy bastard, frankly. And other times, like this time, it's because I really don't think I've got anything to add over the myriad other videos that have been made up until things get to a certain point. What I want to talk about in this video is this whole Richard Spencer face punching thing that took place, and then this discussion, and there's been so many videos, I've watched so many of these videos of discussing whether it's right and okay to punch Nazis, stroke fascists in the face. So that's what I want to discuss in this video. So I think perhaps what I should do before I go any further is to play you the Richard Spencer face punching thing. Okay, so I'll show you the video. Bang! Okay, probably shouldn't have done that.
The leftist protesters, no, I'm not a neo-Nazi.
You like black people?
Well, why do you,
Yeah, sure.
why do so many neo-Nazis love you if you're not a neo-Nazi?
Neo-Nazis don't love me, they kind of hate me, actually.
The KKK, neo-Nazi.
Those people don't like me,
Are you
to be
like
honest.
the hipster version of the neo-Nazi movement?
It's, Pepe's become kind of a symbol.
Okay, so that's what took place there, and what I want to talk about in this video, the question that I want to ask relates to radical Islamic views and the punching of faces, really. But before I do, what I've got to say is I've seen quite a number of videos then as a result of this. And on the one side, there's people flag waving and cheering and saying, yeah, this is what we need to be doing. We need to be punching these fascists and Nazis in the face and making them feel scared to make their positions. And then on the other side, you have people saying, no, I don't think this is the right approach. I've got to say, first off, of the videos that I have seen, right, and maybe that's quite a selective bunch, but of the videos that I have seen of people condemning this kind of violent act, nobody has done it on the basis of saying that Richard Spencer's views are not extreme, that they're reasonable views, or that they agree with Richard Spencer's views. It's nothing to do with that, but it's a more general perspective that this is not the right way to handle these things for a number of reasons. So before I get on to what I really wanted to discuss with regards to Islamic views in this video, I suppose I ought to nail my flag to the mast first and say what I think about punching Nazis in the face, fascists in the face, people with extreme views, extreme right-wing views such as this in the face. And that is that I am vehemently against it. And I'm vehemently against it for a number of reasons. One of the arguments that's given in favour of this is this, if only this had happened, right, in Germany in the 20s and 30s, Hitler wouldn't have risen to power, the Second World War would never have happened, the Holocaust wouldn't have happened, all the horrors of Hitler's regime would never have happened. Now, I'm not an historian, let me make that clear. But I'll give you a link to some of this. My understanding is that actually the National Socialist Party in Germany was not just opposed, but was opposed very, very vigorously. In fact, that they were banned for a number of years. Meetings were broken up. Hitler was in jail for a period of time, right? And it didn't do any good. In fact, it made things worse. And you can understand why it makes things worse, because people who are already aligned with that ideology, it makes them feel victimized, and it makes them even stronger and more devout in terms of their belief. And it also draws people towards those causes because it turns those people into martyrs. How many times have we seen that through history? Jesus, what has been more successful than Christianity? And yet the basis of the success of Christianity in many ways was the martyrdom in early centuries of Christianity, right? So this is not a tactic that seems to play out very well. And the second issue I have is that a line is drawn in the sand generally with regard to physical violence, which is that it's only acceptable as a means of immediate self-defense. When you are in very real and present physical danger, then you can use this as self-defense. And it seems as if we're kind of erasing, we're getting a little stick and smudging that line in the sand where it suits our needs. And that's very, very dangerous, because if you erase that line with respect to Richard Spencer, then you will also erase that line for Richard Spencer. If you say, well, Richard Spencer's for me, Richard Spencer's perspectives are that abhorrent that justifies me punching him in the face, then you also justify Richard Spencer punching somebody else in the face whose views and ideologies he finds equally abhorrent. I think that's a spectacularly bad thing to do, a spectacularly misguided thing to do, especially when you're talking about people such as extreme right-wingers and fascists, people like the Richard Spencers of this world. So that's where I stand with regard to this. But I've seen quite a number of videos that take a different perspective, some of them from the usual suspects, the Steve Shives, Michael Rowlands, Kevin Logan's of this world. I'm not going to play you a clip of Steve Shives. He's made a video that I want to respond to separately in a little off-the-cuff video. What I'll do is I'll play you a clip of Michael Rowlands and a clip of Kevin Logan just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about.
So, Nazi punching, hilarious. We'll always find it hilarious, especially when the Nazi punch like knocks all of his sonic rings out.
Some kind of a symbol.
See, it's pretty fucking hilarious, right? You're it's just like the old days when we used to play Mega Drive, except it's Nazis rather than, you know, weird robots with animals inside them. We all know Nazism is evil. We know their goals. We know where their ideology leads. If you punch a Nazi, especially if you're one of those marginalized and threatened by their ideology, you're acting in self-defense. Even if you're a white person punching a Nazi, you're acting in defense of others. If you aren't punching Nazis, you're showing that you don't care about those who are affected by their ideology.
That is a fascist piece of shit that means harm to people, to innocent people. And so if occasionally you have to clump one of them around the fucking head to make them know that they're not going to be unopposed, frankly, not only am I not going to lose any sleep over it, I put it on my fucking channel because I think it needs to be shown to the world that these people are not going to be unopposed.
So I've played you that so you have a kind of idea of where some of these people are coming from. And yet, I think there's a suspicion from some people, and I'd regard myself as one of those people, that the likes of the Kevin Logans and Michael Rowlands of this world maybe wouldn't be entirely even-handed with how they would apply this kind of punching philosophy, maybe when it comes to some other groups that may end up saying, some members of which may end up saying equally objectionable things. And one of those groups, of course, would be certain Muslims. Of course, we're talking about certain Muslims here. No right-minded person would suggest, hey, Kevin, does that mean we can just go and punch any Muslim? But there are certain people within that religion who say what appears to be at least as objectionable things to anything that Richard Spencer would say. And so therefore the question comes up, does it not? Well, does that mean it's okay to punch Muslims in the face who say these kinds of objectionable things? Now, to give you an example of the kind of thing, I'm going to play you footage from a documentary that was screened on Channel 4 in the United Kingdom as part of the Dispatches series a number of years back. This is particularly relevant because a lot of the footage was filmed either in the Green Lane Mosque or from speakers who speak within the Green Lane Mosque in Birmingham. The Green Lane Mosque is in Birmingham, Kevin Logan's hometown, and the Green Lane Mosque is quite a famous mosque in Birmingham, and it describes itself as a centre for interfaith communication. So let me play you just a couple of clips from this documentary, but it's well worth watching the whole documentary.
On women's rights.
Allah created the woman efficient.
If she doesn't wear hijab, we hit her.
Gay rights.
Take the homosexual man and throw him off the mountain.
Living in a multicultural society.
You have to live like a state within a state till you take one. You have to bomb the Indian businesses. And as for the Jews, you kill them physically.
The mosque films some of Abu Usama's speeches, and they're sold locally as DVDs. His vision of the Islamic State includes extreme punishments, as he outlines in this DVD.
Whoever changes his religion from al-Islam to anything else, kill him in the Islamic State.
The religious leader, or imam, can decide the punishments.
If the imam wants to crucify him, he should crucify him. The person is put up on the wood and he's left there to bleed to death for 3 days.
Abu Usama condemns the Western interpretation of free speech, which means the Prophet can be insulted, but he can be censored.
If I were to call homosexuals perverted, dirty, filthy dogs that should be murdered, That's my freedom of speech, isn't it? They'll say, no, I'm not tolerant. But they feel that it's okay to say something about the prophet.
So that kind of footage is just shown throughout that particular documentary. It was really quite scandalous that this kind of stuff was being preached. So the question that I would have for the Michael Rowlands and the Kevin Logans of this world is, for those Muslims that have these kinds of extreme views, would you accept that it is equally legitimate to punch them in the face in the same way that it is to punch the Richard Spencers of this world in the face? Now that is the kind of question that I would like to ask, and maybe have some kind of dialogue on this subject. The problem is that I don't expect that I'm going to get an answer from the Michael Rowlands and the Kevin Logans of this world. So what I thought I would do in lieu of that, because I think I know the answer that they would give, is that I would give Kevin Logan's answer on his behalf. So let me take you over now to Kevin Logan for his answer. Hello everybody, it is I, Kevin Logan from Birmingham. Look at the beard, etc, etc. So, to answer the question then, why don't we punch the Muslim extremists? The reason why we don't punch the Muslim extremists is that it will only encourage people to punch the Muslims generally. So I think we should have some kind of sympathy for that viewpoint there. I'm listening to Kevin there and I'm nodding in agreement with what he says. I think he's absolutely right in what he says. And let me just remind you, right, okay, just to be absolutely clear, because I'm getting pretty good at these impressions now, that wasn't literally Kevin Logan speaking there, right? He hasn't said that. That is one of my impressions, okay? Put on a bit of a disguise there and put on a Kevin Logan voice. That wasn't actually Kevin Logan. But the argument that Kevin makes there, I think, is right in the way in which he makes it, but it's also right in another way in which he didn't even consider. Let's talk about that first, which is that it's easy to look at these Muslim radical clerics with his outlandish views and say, okay, maybe we should punch them in the face because what they're saying is so absolutely abhorrent. They would throw Jews and homosexuals off mountains, right? You know, if they would do things like that, then why can't we punch them in the face? The problem is that amongst Muslims, and I mean amongst British Muslims, some of these extreme views are actually a lot more widespread than you would think. Let me show you some results from a survey from 10 years ago. 18 to 24-year-old young British Muslims, right? This is just 10 years ago. This isn't in the dim and distant past. 34% of those surveyed, a third of those surveyed, agreed with the statement that the penalty for apostasy from Islam should be death. Now, I'm not saying they'd be prepared to wield the knife themselves any more than the Richard Spencers of this world are necessarily prepared to do the things that they would say themselves, but they're more than happy to see somebody else do that same thing. They think they would condone it. They believe that it is justified, right? And I mean, I can't think of anything more unreasonable than that. I can't think of anything more abhorrent than that effectively your view is that somebody's religion is a life sentence. In fact, it's not even their religion. It could just be the religion that your parents have rubber stamped you with. And if when you grow older and reach adulthood, you start to look at the different issues, start to look at the philosophical and scientific evidence perhaps, and decide, actually, I don't believe any of this, that you should be punished for that. You should be punished for losing your religious belief by being killed, by being murdered. I find that a pretty extreme thing to believe. You have a listen to the things that Richard Spencer says. He says some pretty abhorrent and extreme things, but I can't find a single thing that he says that is worse than that, because I can't actually think of a single thing that I would find more abhorrent than that. So on the basis of that, would Kevin Logan condone, you know, if the Richard Spencers of this world, let's say, because they're the kind of people that would love to do something like this, I'm quite sure, if they could pick out amongst British society those young British Muslims, right, who agreed that the penalty for apostasy should be death, would Kevin Logan be happy for the Richard Spencers of this world to go around punching those Muslims in the face? Would he be waving his hand in support the same way as he is when Richard Spencer is punched in the face? That is something that I would really, really love to know. I'm almost certain within my own mind that he wouldn't. That there'd be a reason why that's just not acceptable when it happens that way around. Yet I can't discern between those two different things. But that wasn't the problem that Kevin Logan had. The problem Kevin Logan had, let's pretend that those kind of views don't exist, and it's only these extreme preachers that have these kinds of views that we would find abhorrent, that nevertheless will start to slip. And very soon, it really won't matter what views you have as a Muslim, just the simple fact that you're a Muslim will justify you being punched in the face. I agree with Kevin, and that's one of the reasons why I'd be vehemently opposed to it. But that doesn't just apply to Muslims. That applies to extreme right-wing views as well, doesn't it? And when I first heard these videos being made, this was the objection that I had right from the start. And then over the last couple of weeks, we've seen so many other things, haven't we? We've seen what's happened with regard to Milo Yiannopoulos. We've seen what's happened with regard to Gavin McInnes, both trying to give talks in different locations. Let me play you a bit of footage of those two examples.
Just make a statement by being here, and I think the protesters are doing the same, and props to them for the ones who are doing it non-violently, but I think that's a very rare thing indeed, so thank you.
Are you surprised, ma'am?
You're not protecting the NYU students here, and I'm disgusted. I'm a professor. How dare you? How dare you fucking assholes protect neo-Nazis? Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you! These are kids who are trying to learn about humanity! They're trying to learn about human rights and against racism and xenophobia and LGBTQ rights, and you're letting these fucking neo-Nazis near here! You should kick their ass! You should! You should be ashamed of yourselves! You should! Fuck that shit! Fuck that shit! It's not up to these students to kick the ass of a neo-Nazi! They don't have to raise their fists! They were taught to be peaceful! Fuck you! Fuck you!
It's coming from a professor.
I'm a professor!
She's a professor! Hey guys, she's a professor!
And you're here to protect neo-Nazis! So fuck you! God fucking damn it! Those kids should not have to take fists up to neo-Nazis, and you're putting them in that situation. Go to hell! Fuck you, NYPD! Woo!
So this is the problem that I have with this. Already we're starting to dilute these things, aren't we? Because Gavin McInnes and Milo Yiannopoulos, they have some quite extreme views, but they're hardly a Richard Spencer, right? But we're starting to erode, aren't we? The same justifications were made. People were making the same justifications, that it is okay to do these things, that it's okay to be violent, or in the case of the woman with regard to Gavin McInnes, she's saying that the police should use violence. The police should be suppressing the supporters of Gavin McInnes and Gavin McInnes by using violence, because she regards him as a fascist, regards him as a Nazi. And we start to gradually water this thing down. It spreads, doesn't it? It's like a kind of disease. It's like a kind of poison that once it's got injected to the bloodstream, it starts to spread. And it spreads and spreads and spreads. Let me show you another bit of footage where it's spreading even further. This is a confrontation between an anti-fascist and between somebody, I suppose you'd describe them as a kind of white nationalist, separatist, sort of racial separatist, cultural separatist. Both people that I have absolutely no fucking time for, it has to be said. Let me play you a little clip of something that the anti-fascist has to say.
Just anything that you don't like when it comes to supporting traditional values. So you're saying support.
Let me actually. What are traditional values? What are
is supporting the
values?
unborn, right? Being opposed to abortion, is that fascism?
Being opposed to abortion?
Right. Because
like writing a law that says you cannot have an abortion.
Right.
That's fascism.
Okay.
You know, when I watched this clip a couple of days ago, I was already planning to make this video. I thought, I've got to include this. This exactly exemplifies just the kind of problem that I'm talking about. And it's exactly the same problem that Kevin Logan highlighted with regard to punching extremist Muslims earlier on in this video, which is that you start to erode and slip. You head down that slippery slope gradually but inexorably. This guy believes that if you're against abortion, if you would legislate against abortion, then you are a fascist. You know, when we come to define terms like Nazi and fascist, inevitably we're drawn back to that period of the Second World War, because that's like a definitional period for these things, isn't it? And I was under the assumption that Great Britain, during the Second World War, we were in a fight against fascism, but it turns out actually that we were a fascist state as well. Seemingly, that it wasn't until the 1967 Abortion Act that we stopped being fascist, that prior to that we had a fascist government, we were a fascist state. And in fact, by the time of the war, the majority of people agreed with the idea that abortion should be illegal on religious grounds. So the people of the United Kingdom, they were all fascists as well. And in fact, even today, Northern Ireland, the country of Northern Ireland is part of the sovereign state of the United Kingdom. In Northern Ireland, abortion is still illegal today. So those politicians, perhaps in the Northern Ireland Assembly, perhaps they deserve to be punched in the face as well, because they're regarded as fascists, right? Now, let me just say, the guy that's on this footage here, he is a self-affirmed anti-fascist. He doesn't come across as a puncher. Let me just say that in his defence. But as part of that movement, he is as involved as anybody else in defining what constitutes a fascist. And so once the understanding becomes that people who oppose abortion are fascists, then you can justify punching them in the face just the same as you can justify punching the Richard Spencers in the face. And that is why this is so dangerous. So the question that I would have to the Kevin Logans and Michael Rowlands of this world, etc., right, is that how do the arguments that you would make with regard to not punching Muslims in the face, this argument of slippage, which I'm sure are the arguments that you would make, how does that not apply equally to extreme right-wing views? Either that is the case, or you should be prepared to come on camera and say, no, Jim, exactly the same thing applies to Muslims, right? And that the Muslims, it's extreme Muslim clerics, I condone punching them in the face. These young Muslims that you talk about that believe that the penalty for apostasy, for wanting to leave or change your religion should be death, I condone punching those people in the face as well. I think it's time to fucking man up on this. Either accept that it applies equally, or you've got to give a much better reason as to why it should apply to these extreme right-wing views, but not apply to these other causes that you seem to go so much more lightly on. Okay, that's all I wanted to say in this video. I'm going to hold my breath now and wait for a response. I'll leave my wife to put a video on explaining when my funeral date will be as a result of asphyxiation. Okay, thank you for watching and bye for now.